In this week's Torah portion, in Leviticus chapter 26, it lays out some of the terms of our covenant with God. It is worth noting that this covenant is with the whole Israelite people, not individuals. So the promises are for the nation of Israel as a communal entity. Here, as in other places in the Torah, we are told that if we follow God's wise instructions and worship God, not false idols, then things will go well for us. It specifically says that if we will keep Shabbat and remain loyal to God, we will have rain in its season and the crops will flourish. Those are certainly big blessings for an agrarian society. And the promises continue: peace in the land, an army that will always be able to protect the citizens, and a growing Israelite community. It is summed up with God saying, "I will be ever present in your midst." The blessings sound wonderful. And unfortunately, the curses that follow, if you don't follow God's words, are as bad as the blessings are good. This passage in the Torah is talking about miraculous divine intercession in our lives. For example, it describes the army's abilities in these terms: 5 of you shall give chase to 100, and 100 of you shall give chase to 10,000. I don't know about you, but it doesn't sound too likely to me. So we might ask, what value is there in this portion for us today if we don't expect supernatural miracles? My answer is that I think this portion actually has incredible wisdom for us. We have to remember that the Torah was originally given or written in a time when people expected miracles and believed that they happened periodically in life. So the Torah speaks that language. But one of the amazing things about Torah is that so many of its messages are still applicable to us today if we look at them more symbolically and less literally. Sometimes getting hung up in the details is a detriment and prevents us from seeing the forest for the trees, as the saying goes. If we zoom out from the particulars of the covenant as described here, and instead listen to its overall message, I think we will find that it is valuable, life-enhancing, and true. What we are being taught here is the idea of national commitment to God. We as a nation are being asked to commit to acting in a morally ethical way. We are to base our politics, behavior, and laws on what is just and beneficial to all the world, rather than focus on what power and might could afford to us. Taken as a general concept, I think there is great veracity to this idea of national reward and punishment. While God may not be involved in our lives to the extent of sending an army to kill us if we do not follow the divine commands, the holiness that is being requested of us does accrue, I believe, to the benefit of our whole nation, and does end up rewarding us when followed. In this portion, for example, we are taught to sometimes set aside personal advancement in order to create a society of greater economic parity. When the Israelites get to Canaan, every tribe except the Levites will be given land, and within that landhold, each family will have land. This portion tells us that if someone falls into economic hardship and has to sell his or her land, which of course is needed for farming and sustaining oneself, then those around him or her should do what they can to try to help this person buy back the land. This is the kind of looking out for one another that is commanded in the Torah. In an essay on this Torah portion, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, Zichrono Livracha, notes that only one other nation in history has consistently seen its fate in similar covenantal, ethical, moral terms, and that is the United States. And in doing so, the founding fathers of the United States were heavily influenced by the Hebrew Bible's sense of national covenant. Today, our world has grown smaller. Not only do the actions of some citizens affect other citizens within the same country, but what happens in one country can deeply influence the health and well-being of another nation. When one country, for example, creates tons of greenhouse gases, it causes sea level rise on the other side of the globe, endangering island nations and many animals. So rather than feeling that our people should catapult this ancient idea of covenantal relationship between people, I think it would be far better if all nations would learn from Torah and see themselves as part of a global covenant. We need to understand the deep truth that our fates are tied together. For our planet to thrive, we have to care about how our actions affect the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, and island inhabitants that we have never met. Where does this leave us, the Jewish people? I think the ideas in this portion are at least partly responsible for our ongoing survival throughout the millennia. It's pretty incredible to think that we have survived. In fact, that we survived almost 2,000 years without having a land of our own. How is it that our people have managed this when so many other great nations have come and gone? This portion teaches us that our nation is able to survive and thrive by, number one, setting God as the ultimate authority, and secondly, heeding the holy message to strive to create an ethical community. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks asserts, a nation cannot worship itself and survive. Sooner or later, power will corrupt those who wield it. If fortune favors it and it grows rich, it will become self-indulgent and eventually decadent. If there are gross inequalities, people will lack a sense of the common good. If government is high-handed and non-accountable, it will fail to command the loyalty of the people. So I think the essence of this covenantal promise still rings true for us. We are being taught here that we have a lot of control over how things go for our people and our world. Nothing is foreordained or a foregone conclusion. In other words, it is our actions that determine whether Judaism survives and thrives. If we stay strong in our mission, remembering to follow God and working to create an ethical, mission-driven Jewish community, then we will continue through the ages. Jews have lived this truth, and it has stood the test of time. For example, as part of this covenant, the Jewish people, wherever they lived, understood the divine imperative to take care of each other. They always had communal money for the indigent, the widow, and the sick. And when a Jewish community was treated harshly by a foreign government, Jews elsewhere did what they could to rescue those Jews. And in fact, we do so even to this day. I hope that we will unabashedly pass on to our children the importance of communal responsibility and care. We start with care for our own community, and this leads us to look out for the larger world, and both benefit. So each of us is reminded today to stay connected to God and God's wisdom, and to choose ethical, generous, community-sustaining actions that will be a blessing to our people and our world. May these lessons bring strength and goodness to all. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be in keeping with God's will.